Hi, everybody. Welcome to ZTV Live. Today is Wednesday, November 11th, 2020. Today happens to be Veterans Day. So happy Veterans Day to everybody out there, and a huge thank you for all of your service and your commitment to our country and the sacrifices that you make. We are indebted as a nation to your service. I didn't grow up around a lot of military families, but since I moved here to Alexandria about 20 years ago, I've gotten to know so many of them. Many of it have had many as neighbors, and they've come in our area and then have moved away, and I've remained close with many of them. Their service is a great sacrifice, and they are probably some of the hardest working, most wonderful people that we've known. So the sacrifices that they go through are really great, and we really can't thank them enough for their service. There is one veteran that I wanted to show tonight and thank him. He's resting in peace right now, of course. This is my dad, Jack Mulligan. This picture was taken, I believe, on the day that he enlisted in the Army in 1943 in Brooklyn, in front of the Brooklyn Trust Company. He was initially rejected for war service because his eyesight was so bad, but then a couple years later, they did accept him, and he said, it wasn't because my eyesight got better. And then this is a picture of my grandfather, Philip Termini, I believe probably before he went into, or while he was in World War I. So those are the two veterans in my immediate family. And I have to say that on social media today, especially on Facebook, it's been a real pleasure to see pictures of everybody's fathers and mothers and family members in their pictures of their service and in their uniform, and children even that we know. There's our friends of ours are of the age where our children are beginning to enter the service, and it is a gratifying, wonderful thing. So thank you, veterans and current active duty people. Tonight we have Mr. Paul Dean on his legal matters. Paul Dean, Esquire. I'm going to go ahead and bring him up on the screen right now. Paul Dean, welcome back to ZTV.
Thanks, Susan. I appreciate being here.
Sure. Well, we're very happy to have you here. And this is a new show that we're going to have with you. It's called Legal Matters with Paul J. Dean, Esquire. And on it, you'll come on about once a month and bring current legal matters to the surface for your discussion. Hopefully, if anybody out there in the audience can let us know that you're out there, give us a hello. We'd love to hear from you, and let us know your questions. And Paul, I believe that you had a blog post that we shared on our ZTV on our Zebra Facebook page today.
Yes, indeed. I appreciate the opportunity to come on the show, and I also would like to extend my best wishes and gratitude to all of the veterans out there, and wish them and all my friends and family and everyone out there who have served and currently serve our country. So we thank you for your service. And do you have a couple of my folks out there that you wanted to show?
I do actually. Let's start with your grandfather.
Thank you. So this is Colonel Thomas Kenny, and he sort of started a long military tradition in our family. He was originally part of the Army Air Corps, which became the U.S. Air Force, and he was a bomber pilot, a B-17 bomber pilot in World War II, and flew a lot of bombing missions over Germany, and has lots of great stories.
Terrific. And then we have Uncle Mike.
So this is Colonel Mike Kenny, Michael Kenny. He's my uncle, and he was a fighter pilot in the Vietnam War, and served in NATO and a number of missions over the years. So we're very proud. And hi, Uncle Mike, if you're out there.
Oh, that's great. And where is he standing at the Vietnam Air War Veterans Memorial? Where is that, in Florida?
That's actually in California.
Oh, in California. Okay. Excellent. And then we have Cousin Tate.
Yes, Cousin Tate Westbrook, that many of my friends know, who currently works in the Pentagon, is a Navy captain and has been all around the world doing great important missions, and he was the captain of newly commissioned USS Spruance a few years ago, and we're all very proud of Tate.
Excellent, excellent. And then we have Nick.
Cousin Nick, yes. So that's Nick Kenny. He's my cousin. He is a staff sergeant in the Air Force, and he serves as a loadmaster. And you can see from the picture there, he gets to fly around in cool big planes and make sure that we're all safe. He's currently stationed in England, so I don't know if he's awake right now.
Uh-huh.
But if he's, shout out Cousin Nick.
That's excellent. That's a fantastic photograph, by the way. I mean, just to the perspective of where he's sitting and seeing the open door of the plane is crazy. And then next we have Jay.
Yep, this is so this is my brother, Lieutenant Colonel Jay Jackson, also with the U.S. Air Force as part of the JAG Corps. And he recently retired from active duty, but is still in the reserves. And the picture that you see taken there was in when he was stationed at Camp Bucca in Iraq.
Wow, that's a great picture. Also with the four boys standing with him. Yeah, that's great. And then last but not least, we have Kate.
So yes, this is my my cousin. This is actually Tate's daughter, Kate, and the newest military member of our family, and she recently joined the ROTC Corps at North Carolina State University. So we're very proud of you, Kate.
That's great. And Kate is with her mom, Ashley, right there.
Yep. And I have so many other friends and other cousin Dave Kenny and Mike Kenny and Allison Kenny, and there's probably some I'm forgetting. If I am, I apologize. But thanks to all. I'm very proud of you. Member of our family.
Good. That's great. Okay. Good. I hate to be sorry to be distracted right there for a second. I'm having a little bit of the window where comments are showing up normally are not there might have been an update on this, and it's not obviously to me, but I do have my phone on here, so if anybody wants to make a comment or ask a question, please go ahead and do so, and I can see it on my phone. There's a little bit of a delay, but we will figure it out. So Paul, I think that you also wanted to talk about a little bit about the history of Veterans Day, right? How it came to be?
Sure. Just briefly, Veterans Day started off in this country as Armistice Day. And the armistice dates back to the end of World War I, when the Axis and the Allied governments decided to lay down their arms. The actual war didn't officially end until some months later with the Treaty of Ghent, I believe. But the armistice essentially ended the war. So a year later, it was President Wilson on the November 11th, 1919, in commemoration of all the brave troops that served in World War I, declared a celebration and a Memorial Day to recognize those soldiers called Armistice Day. And then in 1938, that became a federal holiday. And then after World War II in 1954, it was changed to Veterans Day. There was a big push by the veterans organizations and groups that it should the name should change so that we can recognize all of the soldiers that served in all of the conflicts and served our military at any point in their careers. So under President Eisenhower, it was changed and eventually became a federal holiday. It's moved around a little bit, but it's finally landed back on November 11th. For a while, they kind of moved it every year because they wanted it to be on a weekend, so have a 3-day weekend. But in memorial of sort of that important, significant date in history, they renamed it, or they made it permanently now on November 11th every year. And I have the quote in front of me, officially a celebration to honor Americans veterans for their patriotism, love of country, and willingness to serve and sacrifice for the common good. So that was that's something that I thought was pretty neat.
Definitely. Definitely. And I like that they kind of broadened the scope and made it a little bit more official. I mean, every year there are more and more veterans to thank, So, and a lot of people seem to get Veterans Day, Memorial Day confused.
Right, right.
And so it's veterans is everybody who served, and Memorial Day really honors those who have served and passed away, or those who lost their life, in while serving their country.
Yeah, there is a fine line that you see every year, and some of the old timers like my mother will say, no, you're not supposed to say thank you to this person and that person on this particular day. But I think at this point in time that at least for me, it's 2 times a year that we get the opportunity to honor those that serve.
Absolutely, to honor them, and of course we really thank them every day. So
anything like that. So.
Yeah, good. Excellent. Well, that was really great to see all of your family members. We also, and I don't have pictures of them all, but many of my cousins have joined the service. And speaking of the military families, that was also, I will give a shout out to my cousin Francesca and her husband, Bill Wall, who retired as a lieutenant colonel in the Army, but served in the Special Forces, just very brave. And their son, Evan, is celebrating is not really the right word, but commemorating his first year as a veteran. So anyway, shout out to them. So shall we get down to our top your top 10 this episode of Legal Matters, the top 10 reasons to update your will?
Absolutely, the fun stuff.
Yeah. Well, we personally had a will years ago, but boy, circumstances have just done a 180, and I would say that we've, within 10, 15 years, everything really changed. So I would imagine that's probably one of the reasons why.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's really kind of what inspired me to write this blog post. I got into sort of estate planning thinking that it was more of, finding people who don't have a will and fixing them a will and then just moving on. But finding more and more as my practice develops over the years that really, estate planning is something that is with you throughout your entire life as circumstances changes. And more I have clients these days who have executed some sort of estate plan, whatever documents, whether it's a will or a trust or a power of attorney or a medical directive, and but they're just outdated and it doesn't really fit their particular situation. And so they need to have those documents updated, and so that's what kind of inspired me to write this blog post, to kind of point some of the reasons out, because I do get these questions quite frequently.
Yeah, I'm sure. I bet. So, what's number 10?
So
I don't know if you were going to go in Letterman, go from 10 down to 1, or
Okay, so. Well, I mean, the first reason that you probably should change your estate plan is that your financial situation has changed. Estate planning is, at its core, figuring out what to do with your assets. Whether it's your home or your monetary assets, or any kind of bank account, your stuff. Your net worth, and that changes as you go throughout life. Hopefully, if you're in a circumstance where you continue to gain in wealth as you get older, there are a lot of things that you need to think about. If you acquire new property, you probably want to make sure that's in the will. If you reach a certain income or net worth level, there's probably some tax planning that you should be thinking about. So anytime that your financial situation changes, in other instances, a lot of people get inheritance. So all of a sudden you're the beneficiary of a trust, or you've inherited a house, or some land, or some property, or some money. When that happens, it's certainly a time to update your will to sort of account for all of those types of things. And conversely, sometimes you lose assets.
Right.
Sometimes financial situation changes, not necessarily for the worse, I hope, but if you sell a home or get rid of or sell off some stocks or things like that, and you find yourself, particularly if your will makes a gift of those particular items, it can create a lot of confusion during the administration of your estate if you have things in your will or your trust that you're giving to people, but you no longer own them. So certainly want to keep those types of things up to date.
Yeah. Boy, that can get really complicated pretty quickly, can it?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. Wow. And then something that I mentioned before, my husband and I had done our will. So obviously, marriage and divorce are,
Yeah.
two big reasons to update your will.
Yes, love and marriage, so to speak. We've got, really. So as soon as you get married, you ought to have a will done. People bring different types of assets into the marriage. They have different characteristics. Some things become marital property. Other things can be, titled and be, property that you hold out separately. So you'll want to sort of understand the ramifications of that. Obviously, you'll want to have, make sure that your spouse now is the beneficiary of your estate, even though people should be aware that, if it gets into a circumstance where for some reason you want to disinherit your spouse, which I never hope happens, there are actual automatic rights to inheritance by spouses, depending on a number of factors, whether or not you have kids from a previous marriage, or if you, the length of time of the marriage and things like that. So people should be aware of those types of things. And you want your spouse to make sure that you put them in the important roles that go with estate planning.
Right.
Part of the planning process is choosing the executor of your estate. Someone who's going to be charged with administering your will and making sure that your wishes are carried out. You want to have someone to be your medical agent to act on your behalf and make decisions if you become incapacitated. And all of those, maybe it's a trustee. And so you want to make sure that your spouse has an appropriate role in your estate planning documents. And, it also gets a lot more complicated, of course, if you're on a second marriage, particularly if you have children. You have to really think sort of very carefully about sort of how your estate and your assets would be sort of divided amongst a subsequent spouse and the children from the previous marriage. So that brings out a lot of issues. And of course, divorce, again, if you've had a proper estate plan in place and you've gotten divorced, you obviously need to revamp that whole thing, because then you're in a situation where you probably would want to think about removing the former spouse as a primary beneficiary and executor, and all the types of roles that they have in the will. And again, make sure that you're thinking very carefully about your assets, particularly if you have children. Again, I've run across several situations where you have couples that have divorced and they have children, and so the spouse that I'm doing the estate planning for wants to make sure that their assets are protected and go directly for the benefit of their children, particularly if the ex-spouse gains custody. So making sure you're protecting yourself in those circumstances.
Yeah. Wow, that's so much to think about. Hey, we have a question from the audience from Marilyn Kopash, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Marilyn. Thank you so much for asking the question. She wants to know, should your house be in a will or in a trust?
Yes, absolutely. And it depends. You can put it in a will or a trust. Really, it just depends on sort of what you want to do with it when you pass away. Now, a lot of times, houses, if they're owned jointly, so a lot of times a married couple, you'll have, your house on a deed, and both of your names will be on the deed. And so when one of you dies, it automatically passes. It has joint survivorship, so the home automatically passes from one person to the next. But particularly if you own your home by yourself and you're the only person on the deed, you should always make sure that you have it in your will or your trust, so that it's for so many people around here, that's their asset that's worth the most. So
Right.
it's always important to make sure that first of all what the deed looks like. So again, if it's a joint survivorship, not necessarily, but at the same time, you want to make sure that it's there.
Yep. Yeah, no, that is, I mean, talking about your assets, that's the biggest one, for sure. What about, and I think that you touched on this before, but and for instance, this is what we kind of ran into. You're welcome, Marilyn. Marilyn just said thank you, and you're welcome, and thank you again for any questions. If anybody else has any questions regarding this topic, please don't hesitate. I did fix my comment window, so we're all good there. So when our children were little, we, between my husband's and my siblings, we kind of like, if anything were to happen to us, who would take the children, who would, be in charge of the money, because I think that they do advise you that it should be two different people to do that, right?
No, absolutely. It's planning for when you have minor children is obviously a very important part of your estate plan. And you want to make sure that you're thoughtful about who would gain custody of your children. You designate that in your will, and then what happens to the finances or the assets that you leave behind for the support and care. One of the things that you mentioned obviously is that sometimes you want someone to oversee the funds that's not necessarily the custodian of the children. So there's a way you can set that up that's separated. The other thing that people that I come across all the time, and a lot of people don't think about, is that minors can't legally inherit. So a lot of times you'll have a will or beneficiary designations set up, and you'll name your 5-year-old child, but then you find out if something happens to you and your spouse that it creates a lot of confusion on sort of what happens to that money if the person can't hold it. So you should always, if you have minor children, make sure that you set up, either a testamentary trust, which is, just language right there in your will that just sort of designates that if, a minor stands to inherit any of the proceeds from your estate, that the executor is directed to set up a trust.
Right.
You can set up a child's trust. You could set up a pot trust. There's all different avenues that you can take to make sure that you don't get into a position where you're creating a lot of confusion.
Which is one of the reasons why you want an attorney to help you with it, because they know a lot more about all these little ins and outs and the extra services and products than if you were like, I just want to do it simple. But really, there's attorneys help make it simple for you. So we have another question from Tate Westbrook. Hi, Tate. Thank you so much for your question. And he has an excellent question. Can you set up the will to instruct the executor to sell the house and distribute the proceeds to the heirs? He's saying with 3 children, I don't want to stick them with the stress of figuring out who should get the house.
The answer is yes. That happens all the time. That's absolutely something that you can and you should do, because you bring up a good point. Sometimes, I see wills and trusts where, people have just left someone, as part of their estate, a property that's, owned by 10 different people, and then, you try to figure out, well, should we sell it? And one person wants to sell, the other person wants to live in it. There's all kinds of complications that can arise there. So, but the answer is yes.
Yeah, that is a good question. Tate, thank you so much. We appreciate your watching and asking the question. And I think I just, it was a natural segue of into your next item, which is simplify. And what circumstances would make simplifying your will a good option?
So this happens to me all the time too. People come up to me and say, Paul, I've got this estate plan that I executed, 20 years ago. And can you take a look at it? I think I don't really understand it. And they hand me like a box or a binder that's this thick, and they're just like, do something with this. And so, you take a look at it, and you're like, first of all, a lot of these were executed when, the laws were a lot different than they are now. So they're very much overly complex to try to, get the best tax situation that's out there. The laws have changed, the statutes have changed. But at the end of the day, people just don't want to burden their family and the people that are going to be tasked with administering their estate when they're gone with some very, very complex set of documents that they don't understand, someone else doesn't understand, and they just want to basically simplify things. So, I've taken sort of that and basically revoked everything and just, designed a new sort of simplified estate plan that would be a lot easier on the beneficiaries once they pass away, but also something that they can understand and feel comfortable that there's not something in there that's going to cause problems down the road.
So it's a valid threat then to be like, hey, you're going to be out of the will. I just have to make one call to my lawyer. So right, don't do anything stupid. We have a good question here from Marilyn again. Thank you, Marilyn. What about a deeded timeshare? Is there any way not to stick that with your kid?
So that's a good question. It comes up all the time. One of my standard form questions is, do you have a timeshare? And the answer is really it depends. These things, a lot of people have these timeshares, and part of the requirements are that you have to pay monthly or annual fees for maintenance and things like that. And really it depends on, there's two types of timeshares. There's those that are deeded. So you actually have a property deed that's recorded and filed. And the other type is membership points. It's sort of a membership points club that allows you to use your property or different properties. So what I recommend to clients in that situation is, if you do not want the deeded property to automatically pass to your children, leave instructions behind, essentially, that they have the right, and any beneficiary has the right, to refuse the gift. So that, basically they can say, I'll take my inheritance, but they can basically notify the timeshare company that if they don't want it, they don't have to accept it, and essentially that kind of reverts back to the company and goes away.
Wow. Boy, I bet the timeshare companies love that. I can't imagine if they'd said, can we ask you again in 6 months?
They're shooting daggers at me right now.
Yeah. How about a chocolate and a cup of coffee, and then let's think about it, right? So, okay. Well, this information is really great, and we're almost through with our time. But let's hit a couple more things. Like wonderful questions coming in. Hello, Bob Malloy. Thank you for commenting. He agreed with the timeshare being a sticky situation. What if you move or relocate? How does that affect your will?
So in the United States, if you move from state to state, each state honors your will. Sometimes, though, it might be a good idea to execute a new will that is compatible with the laws of the state that you live in, or particularly if that's where you think you're going to end up for the rest of your life. It makes a lot easier, on the administrators of the estate, that when they go to probate the will, or they're dealing with different courts and things like that, is if it's something that's been executed in the state that they're in, it's obviously a lot easier on everybody else. And also, you want to think about, a lot of times the people that serve those roles as executor, or if they're your power of attorney, or if they're your medical agent, you want those people to be local. Because they're dealing with local courts, local jurisdictions, things like that. So you want to make sure that you're updated and compatible with the current state laws that you're in.
Right. Interesting. I didn't even think about you just don't think about this stuff until you are sometimes too late. So this is really interesting, helpful information. And then. The final reason in your top 10 list was the passage of time. Is there a recommended you do a will? So should you review it again in 5 years or in 10 years? I mean, do you advise people to, obviously you want to keep up to date with it, but is there any kind of a timetable like that?
So barring any, change in circumstances like we've sort of, touched on here, you really probably want to take a look at that at least every 10 years at a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
So as you said, your life circumstances change. A lot of people are in a situation where they've executed a will, and some of the people that play important roles in their wills, really, either they're no longer with us, or they might not be the most appropriate person. They've had a falling out, for instance. They've gone away, or variety of reasons. But the other real reason is, the laws are changing all the time. Every year, the Virginia Code comes out with some sort of new laws that usually are for the better and make things easier on people. Whether it's the Uniform Access to Digital Assets Act was sort of one of the newest things that they came out with to sort of help give executors access to if someone passes away, all of their online accounts, their Facebook pages, their Netflix, all that type of stuff, to sort of break down some barriers, and that should be sort of referenced in your will. So dealing with new technologies, dealing with uniform standard changes to the uniform codes, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of times, as I said, in the tax laws, I mean, it's I look at estate plans that are 10 years old that we mentioned are overly complex because of the tax ramifications. Well, recent laws have basically made the tax, the federal estate tax gift exemption, for a married couple up to $22 million. So if your estate's below that, you probably don't need that much of an advanced tax planning strategy. So, at least every 10 years or so, you should take a look.
Wow, that's interesting. And yes, of course, the tax laws are changing all the time, and it seems like the changes are big changes where they used to be kind of small little tweaks. Nowadays the changes are really much more impactful. Maybe just because I'm getting to be more in the target of the impact it hitting. Janet Daniels, thank you so much for your question. Has a question. If it is possible, is there a simple answer to the differences and benefits of either a will or a trust? That's a big question.
Subject for a whole nother show.
Yeah.
The answer is it depends. No, it really depends on your circumstance, and I get asked this question a lot of times. I mean, if it's a fairly simple, straightforward estate, I usually recommend, a will. Again, you can kind of create small trusts if it's for, a child or even, a pet or caring for a parent, a testamentary trust. But a lot of people like to use a revocable living trust that allows a lot more flexibility and helps you avoid, the probate process and things like that. But a lot of people get scared away because, first of all, it's a little bit more expensive to put together. But second of all, it also, a lot of times entails going through the process of retitling all of your assets so that they're held by the trust. So it makes sense for a lot of people. I do them all the time, but it really just depends on your individual circumstances.
Right. Well, and if anybody has more questions about that, because it is an excellent question, they can reach out to you at pjd-law.com. And I know that you have a contact page on there. This has just been a really helpful informative session. I agree with Bob Malloy. I kind of took the words right out of his mouth off of his comment. So in closing, Paul, what should give people like a quick little to-do list if they're like, oh my gosh, like I haven't even thought about this. Where do I start, or what should I kind of start with?
Well, the first thing you need to do is find your documents. Make sure you know where they are and that they're located in a safe place, and that your executor knows where they are, and then read them. Read them. Make sure they make sense. Make sure they you understand what's going on, And if you see things and you think you need the will to be updated, the first person that you should talk to, if you can find them and they're available, is the estate planner, the attorney that you worked with to set it up. Because that's, they know they know you, they know exactly what you're talking about. Hopefully, they still have your files, in their files and in Word. So you should always just go back to the original attorney that developed your estate. If you can't find them, find an estate planning attorney, a friendly one perhaps that's staring at you at the screen right now, and no, I'm happy to take. I'm always happy to take a look. I offer a free review. If anyone wants me to take a look at what they have, I'm happy to sit down and look things over and give my recommendations on. Sometimes it's just a matter of a simple change of swapping out names or beneficiaries or a clause or a phrase here or there. But other times, you might need to throw the whole thing out and start fresh.
Right.
But,
well, that's really great advice and a very generous offer, Paul, that you've made to look at people and kind of give them an initial free consultation of what to do. So I hope that people take advantage of that. I think it's pretty clear that something that seems to be a little bit complicated to us ordinary folk is really made less complicated with a professional. Obviously, as in any industry, you're going to go to a professional to get something important done. So thank you, Paul, so much for coming on the show tonight and sharing your extensive knowledge on this subject with us. And I do believe that you're coming back next month, I think December 9th, right?
yes, indeed.
Excellent. Okay, well, we'll look for you then. We'll learn before then, of course, what legal matters you'll be discussing. But until then, thank you again for coming on, and we always love having you here on ZTV Live.
All right. Thank you very much, Susan.
All right, Paul. Okay, take care. Okay, that's going to do it for us for ZTV Live tonight. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks for the questions. We love the audience interaction. Just really informative stuff on estate planning and updating your will. That's going to do it for ZTV Live for us tonight. Tomorrow night, please join us. We have local dog trainer and author Kathy Callahan will be joining us talking about her new book, 101 Rescue Puppies. And with lots of photographs. We might have some videos of some of those cute puppies. And so, but Kathy's going to talk about her really heartwarming book of just a bunch of stories. I mean, they're love stories, all these stories that she gets to know the dogs so well. She's a wonderful guest. We've had her on before. Really looking forward to seeing her again tomorrow night. And that's going to do it for this week for ZTV Live. So until we meet again, be sure to be kind and to be the good news in someone's life.